Anyways,
Okay,
hello
cool.
everyone to Red Planet. Hi chatters. If you are just with us, hanging out with us, welcome back. And for everyone who just tuned in, welcome to the channel and welcome to Red Planet. Today's episode 11, a very, very special, very much hyped, very much very important episode of Red Planet. We'll be talking about DIY HRT. And if you don't know what that means, we will also explain for you. But yeah, I'm very personally very excited for this episode. We will be joined by Keffels later. After we do a little bit, I'm assuming we're going to be talking about a little bit of a news. But we'll be joined by Keffels later, who is a Twitch streamer, and we'll probably introduce them probably when they come on. But yeah, friend of mine, fantastic content creator, just all around excellent person. And so yeah, we'll be having a conversation with them. Very, very psyched for it. How is chat doing? And how are, more importantly, let's face it, because we do love hierarchies.
I mean,
here.
it's more important, yeah.
More importantly, how are the hosts doing?
I'm gonna be. I'm still like adjusting myself more because I was just filming a firefighter segment for my new video. Like
you look
10
very
minutes
cute.
ago. Thank you.
You look
I
very
appreciate
like
it.
aggressively
Thank you,
cute.
But I was like, I had like fake like charcoal smeared all over my face. I had the axe and the everything like 10 minutes
I've
ago.
seen it.
What?
I was running around the house changing.
Amazing.
She looks great. It's
if you look on Twitter,
brilliant.
you can see it. Yeah,
it's all over Twitter.
Amazing.
Wow.
That's yeah, just a little sneak peek of what we can expect from Soph's
That's exciting.
video coming up. Yeah, it is exciting, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I thought I'm talking about the guys who say breadtube is CIA. What's the most breadtube thing I can do? I'll do a philosophy tube character. That'll make them mad as fuck. So let's.
Oh right, yeah. Look, we've got like even like complete strangers in the chat, like Snornat saying aggressively cute. So
Yeah.
Total strangers agree that I'm cute and hot.
Thank you, kind stranger. Wow.
Yeah, amazing.
That's why I like to outsource my compliments to like a third party. That way I know that when people call me cute, I'm like, correct. This has been I see you say source.
Absolutely.
I'm like, here is the source. An independent third party is verified. Many people are saying it.
Chat, do your own research. Snornat is Sophie funded media, and if you look into this, you just gotta follow the money.
Yeah.
How are the lads doing? How are my boys and the co-hosts today? How you doing?
We're doing all right. I'm like double fisting a coffee and a smoothie because
Holy shit.
had breakfast yet because we're
fucking
a little
hardcore.
early. It's all right.
Water.
I just need I need all of the thing, all of the power I can get.
Someone in chat just asked, "What's bread tube?" Oh no!
It's like
it's a tube. It's a tube. It's made of
one
bread.
Of those French things.
You know when
you
you
get
get
a video, there'll be a segment explaining it in the video. If
That's
you
right.
They don't know.
British
There's a
people.
baguette.
British people stop
Yep.
saying "ch" when it's "t." It's challenge.
No, actually,
Bread
we invented the
tube.
language, so you know.
Yeah. What's the etymology of tube? Tube.
Tube.
I think in New Zealand we kind of say both, right? Like I don't know.
Do you actually?
Depends on what kind of New Zealand accent you got. There's like a couple, like
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you don't
But,
say channel, do you? So you know.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, the English language is full of like ridiculous inconsistencies.
No,
so,
it's
yeah.
not.
Yeah.
It is.
I think it is.
It is. If you can spell the word GHOTI, and if you use phonetics in English, it says fish. Think about it. So GH is F, like as in cough, right?
This is some shit.
Or
I hate
trough,
this.
right? And then the O is like the O in women, so you can pronounce that as an E sound.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then also the TI at the end is the start of like the suffix shun. So like information, compilation.
Oh.
So you can take the TI.
It is. Yeah. No, it is. It's...
So there you go.
Yeah.
GHOTI fish.
And this is why
This
we
sounds
don't.
like
This is
weird.
why we don't let
riddle my
mule.
dad would give me, and I would get mad as fuck when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
This
It's
is-
wild, but it's like the more you like learn about other languages, you realize how like just like there's like no internal consistency in English. There's like
No, English
ridiculous
sucks.
bullshit. Yeah. Even
Yeah,
like all the
English does
stuff,
suck.
you know, like I can't remember who it was. Someone brought up a really good point in one of their, another BreadTube video or whatever about how, like the whole like pronoun discourse is like just not a thing in other languages because so many other languages don't even have like gendered pronouns. And I was like, holy shit, yeah, that's right. There's no like in Maori, there's no, it's just so it's like this isn't even a debate there. And it's like. Such a symptom of like English culture war bullshit.
Well, it's a colonial white settler thing. It's like trying to put people in boxes. Like definitely, I chatted with Lost Sue about that a lot, about how it's like, coming into like indigenous lands and being like, no, none of this gender fluidity. You need to be a he or a her, and that's it. You have your roles. And it's a totally actually like
imperialist. There's a bunch of like stories about stuff like that. Like when and it's like this is kind of like a gross story on one hand, but it is also kind of like kind of shows the funny kind of side of things where it's like there's like in one of the settlers journals coming down here was there was some some guys that show up to some village and they're just like, hey, show us where all the hot babes are at or whatever. And they, they were like, hey, here's some nice young girls. And then they were like, what? These girls have dicks.
No way. That's actually in a
I can't remember who it was, but it's like one of the famous like New Zealand pioneer types. Or whatever. And everyone was just like,
versus the Chad Maori.
And everyone was just like, what are you talking about?
The virgin settler, oh no, these girls have dicks versus the Chad Maori. This woman has a penis? Splendid.
Yeah.
Splendid.
Absolutely. Yeah, fuck, I should make a meme of that. But yeah, anyway.
Can we Giga Chad, but give him the like face tattoos?
Can we quickly do a screenshot?
Yeah, I've done it before.
Quickly.
Awesome.
All right,
cool. Screenshot.
Oh shit, yeah, okay.
All right, cool. Am I going to double fist it for a screenshot?
What do I do with my hand? Everyone does hand things. No hands.
No hands.
Okay,
No
we got
hands?
it.
What?
I got it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Should we talk about news?
We should.
Let's talk.
Should we do it? Should we get
about
newsy?
News. Yeah.
Current
Cool.
affairs, things that are happening. All right.
Yeah. So our guest, who will be on shortly, Keffels, raised over $50,000 for trans kids in Texas, which is based as hell, and we'll definitely applaud Keffels some more. The Kefster, the Kef
fun
machine,
claps in the chat for
the
Keffels.
Caffeinator. When they're on later. But the situation in Texas is pretty shit. The situation in Idaho, kind of worse. The situation in Tennessee, also bad. A whole bunch of states have used the Ukraine war as a distraction to push tons of like hyper fascist anti-trans legislature, and we will doubtless talk about that a bit during the show. But the first decisive legal battle has actually been won for trans people because a Texas judge, there's a link to this in the notes if you want to put it on screen, a Texas judge has actually temporarily blocked investigations into parents of trans kids to stop Texas CPS from kidnapping kids from their parents, which is a thing that I think should be stopped.
Kidnapping is bad.
I think so.
I
think so.
I mean, I feel like if you like care about the children, I feel like you would be against kidnapping children. But maybe I'm just a crazy communist or something.
Wacky theory. Yeah. But have you considered 100 million dead iPhone Vuvuzela? So there is that.
Now that you bring it up.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense.
And this injunction is really important, and it's really important that it happens so quickly because the way these fuckers work is like, it doesn't matter if it's legal, it doesn't matter if it's been officially ruled that they will go and kidnap as many kids as they possibly can until someone says stop. And so the fact that someone said stop very quickly is very good news for the people in Texas, but then there's still other states. So like I say, we'll talk about it more, but shit's going on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I have so much to say about this. It's like
there's
like endless things to say about this. There's endless directions to take this. But this is just one thing I want to say that is not directly pertaining to trans, but it's pertaining to what the ripple effects of this is. Chat, everyone needs to know that if you're not trans, this is not like, and by the way, if things don't affect you personally, and it affects marginalized people, you should still care. So I'm never going to try to like logic somebody into caring. Like, well, it might affect you one day. You should care because you care about marginalized people, because that's the whole point of us being here, is to stop oppression and to build like humanity, to build community, to honestly, like, I hate to say it, but kind of like build like a love centric like kind of like society where we actually like care about each other. So that's that. But I will say that also the ripple effects of things like this, it does actually affect people outside of just trans people, or the people that are getting reprimanded for not outing trans people or outing the families that have trans people. Because I'm seeing now that there's also legislation that's trying to be pushed. I forget what state it is, but like anti-abortion legislation. Which state was that tried to make it? Or Chad,
that
maybe,
is Texas.
Was it Texas?
Well, that is Texas.
More.
Yeah, I mean, they've been trying to do that for a long time anyway. But I mean,
but yeah, you see what I mean,
these
right?
things do just go hand in hand. Yeah,
exactly.
It's always been that way. We see Texas pioneering a lot of new fascist legislation, and they definitely try exactly the same stuff that they're doing. For one, for the other as well, and it does go both ways. Like, I think I've seen people offer both takes. Like, if you see this happening with trans people, it'll be abortion next, and if you see this with abortion, it'll be trans people next. I usually see it the former, not the latter, but like I have seen both, and I think the accurate picture is like they're doing both at the same time, and like experimenting in the law to find ways to persecute people, and when they find one that sticks, they use it.
Yeah. They just throwing all the shit at the wall, and they're just like, all right, cool. This is an angle. Like, this is a little crack that we can pry open. Yeah,
Totally.
Yeah, it's totally bullshit. But
is it amazing that the anti-abortion stuff is also think of the children? It's all based on this fake caring about children in order to control marginalized people's bodies.
Yeah, it's children and families, right? Like.
We care about families. That's why we're ending your right to an abortion, even in the case of ectopic pregnancy, which is like kills people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, they just have no idea about what any of that means. But yeah, it's the same thing. It's like, we just want to protect families and children, so we're going to tear apart families and try and prosecute parents for helping their children and shit.
Right.
It's like, whose families, whose children, who are you protecting here?
Right.
And it's like, it's always run on these these imagined cases, like, imagine if a parent did this, so to stop them from doing that, we've got to just fucking destroy the rights of an entire group of people. It's
I've been unbelievably deep in the conspiracy hole for all of this, so throughout any discussion, I'm just like, well, you have to remember they are keeping these babies alive, and they do that so that they can take the organs, and they're keeping the babies alive and viable, and you're not a human being legally. That's how they get around it. You're actually not until the ethics board approves you.
That's right,
Sophie. You can't just do that. You can't just start doing impressions.
Well, actually,
she can and she should. She can and she should.
That is true. God damn it.
But positive news, because that's what I feel like we try and focus on, showing the wins.
So that was
fuck Greg Abbott's in the chat real fast.
Yeah.
Greg Abbott. Absolutely.
You're allowed to say
The district judge, Amy Clark Meacham, the one that overturned it. She said that there's like a pretty good chance that they completely overturn it, completely, get rid of this thing, and that the directive put forward by Abbott was just like it has the effect of a law or like a bunch of laws, but without actually introducing any kind of legislation or like any kind of policy or anything like that, which is like, that's when something like that's when this guy is literally like, well, what did they say in that thing? It's like, encroached on the legislative arm of the government. So it's kind of like, like an individual person, like, this guy, Greg Abbott, is taking on the role of government in, like, kind of creating, like, a loophole to create a law sort of thing without actually having to create a law.
Well,
because it was just a directive, basically.
Trump
it
was
was
for the kids in cages. Trump did that. He basically just interprets stuff like differently.
Yeah. We'll almost definitely get into this more later in the episode, and so we should get onto the other news article we have. I actually did a stream covering this, so if people are curious about my coverage of when, not the positive news, but when it happened, I did a stream covering
the negative news.
Yeah, like the decision. I'm still meaning to do a separate stream where I kind of get together with some other trans people and talk through like everything that's happened, including the overturning. But I definitely did talk a lot about that, like the way that he just used this interpretation essentially as a de facto law. But who added the thing about Minneapolis? I think that's really interesting.
I did. Yeah, so this is interesting. So, there's a link in the thing. I don't know if bring it up here, but it's from local news. Minneapolis says, Day 3, Minneapolis educators march while parent union calls on strike to end, which is like interesting, right? So it's like already in that headline there's,
What's
Minneapolis educators march. Yeah, okay, so we'll get into that. So while parent union calls on strike to end, I think it's interesting that it's like, educators marching and then parent union, the way that they've phrased that. So it's like, it is like the teachers union, well, the education union, and then the parent union, which is like, so parent unions are a thing that have popped up since the start of COVID. And there's different ones and they all kind of do different things or whatever. There's, so this is the MNPU, I think. Whereas there's like
PU indeed.
The NPU, the National Parents Union, was the big one that started up, and that's like an umbrella one for like a bunch of different things. That is like has been investigated by people, and it's like kind of this thing where it's like a police union. It's not actually a union, and it's like they seem to be a lot more kind of sus than they let on. There's like heaps of stuff like. It's the NPU, which is like the biggest separate one. That is their main focus is getting kids back in school and all this kind of shit like that. And it seems like this Minneapolis one has a focus on the same kind of thing. Their whole thing is the students' education first. So they're like, we need these kids back in school. We need them, learning. We don't want to disrupt their childhood, their education. This Parents Union does support other stuff, like they do like help parents get their kids into schools and all this kind of stuff. But I think that it's really interesting when we look at these two as like an educators union. So I think it's this one in particular is the Minneapolis Federation of Teachers. So they are looking for, like, they're overworked, they want smaller class sizes, and they even, like, they particularly call out in their statement, they're saying the economy is rigged in favor of the wealthiest corporations, which is in part leading to underfunded schools. So this is cool because it's like, we talked about this in an earlier thing about how some unions will be like, oh, we just want better conditions for our workers, whereas other unions looking at the bigger picture and they're saying like, no, this is a systemic thing, like this whole the game is rigged, sort of thing. And so I think it's really interesting that that's, where these guys are coming from.
Yeah.
And they're talking about, like, look at what, like, the district superintendent for these schools is making versus what the teachers are making. Or they call them ESPs, Education Support Professionals. And they're like, like, all this kind of stuff. And they're saying, there's like these huge like surpluses that don't get spent because they're like, too concerned with having money in the bank instead of actually paying the teachers, all this kind of stuff. And yeah. And so the president of the MFT, the Federation of Teachers, has said, like, the district is dug in like purely for ideological reasons.
Of course.
And they have complete control and all this kind of stuff. But then the parents union is coming and being like, this strike is disrupting our children, their education or whatever, so we need to get you back to work so our children can get back in schools. And so they're framing it like this whole, like, with the way it's framed. And I mean, like, for these parents, I'm sure it makes sense. They're like, we need to be able to work, our kids need to learn or whatever like that. And so it's like, instead of being like, oh, okay, no, we should support these teachers to get what they want so they get back to school. Instead, they, like, become an adversarial group sort of thing. So it's like, you can see where it's like, there's no, like...
Yeah, I mean, we had a similar thing in the UK during when the pandemic was, still, like, just fully in the swing of it. Tony Blair came out in support of it because he's a fucking ghoul who should be in jail. Which was just like, we should send the kids back to the school. And it was just like, well, no, you fucking shouldn't. Like, everyone will get coronavirus. And obviously they did. But like, it was a really weird thing because like I sympathize with, there were a lot of parents, my brother's an example, we've got 2 kids, and like a lot of parents who were saying like, well, our kids aren't getting educated because they're just stuck at home and they don't have any contact hours with teachers. And like, obviously the solution to that is to fund way better programs to be able to teach kids at home safely during the pandemic, like other countries did. But instead, like, obviously the ruling class solution is, if we can take your kids away, if we can get your kids back in school, then you have no excuse not to go back to work. And it was really obviously they were just, I mean, it's a horrifying thing. Speaking of like, think of the children or saving the children, like it's taking the kids hostage to make them to make the workforce go back.
Put them into like a potentially, dangerous situation. I mean, like, aside from just normal American school danger, but like, like actually putting them back in the middle of a pandemic sort of thing, But I thought it was interesting. So it's like, so the Federation of Teachers, they're providing, like, their statement is kind of like, like they're talking about class, they're talking about systems and things like that. Right. And I think if the Minnesota Parent Union really, like, if they, like, because they're kind of more like this kind of like liberal union or whatever, if they actually kind of dug into it, they would see that their class interests are aligned with the teachers and they could probably work together. But the interesting thing is that the parent union, their statements are full of things like, they're saying, the teachers unions actions are harming our children, our families, and they particularly call out, and they're disproportionately affecting students and families of color and things like that. So they're really pulling on like a lot of the kind of like IDPOL kind of stuff, which is interesting because it's like, okay, so we've got these 2 adversarial like unions or whatever, one providing systemic analysis and then one going for the liberal IDPOL angle. But the fucking, like the newspapers and the media are like, yes, they're like, like, look how this teachers union is oppressing these people of color,
I love
and it's
when
like,
unions oppress people.
yeah. It's just like, oh my God. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, that's what we like to, talk about a lot. Like, you can't, like, without, like, if you have like a union or like some kind of, mutual aid group or whatever like that, you've got to be looking at the bigger picture. You got to be looking at the systemic issues. You got to have, and it needs to be tied with some kind of class analysis, things like that.
And people there are definitely some leftists who go the wrong way, and they basically class reductionism, right? And they just try and say there are no issues but class issues, and we shouldn't be fighting for anything but communism because like it's just the material that affects all these minorities. And it's like, like the material effects are the ones that matters, and it's our class interests that are aligned and whatever. But like, it's like, I just want to give people a warning to not be duped by that kind of language, because like trans people need to organize as trans people to change the material effects on our lives. Like, it is material, but like it is also like
totally. And it's like what like a lot of there's like so the statements from the parents union where they're talking about like, oh, this affects people of color and all this kind of stuff. It's like, yes, absolutely. And it's like, if you actually look at the bigger picture and stuff, you'll see how like what the teachers union are talking about is like, that's the source of all that, that's like, that's where that's coming from, sort of thing. And it's like, it's kind of annoying because it's like, like they're just like, they're picking at the scab on the top instead of looking at like, like what caused the scab, what's happening underneath or whatever. Where, I don't know.
I actually realized there's 2 other things I'd like to talk about in the news here. And they're both to do with stuff that we've interacted with on Twitter through the Red Planet Twitter account. If people want to follow that, it's red_planet_TV. And actually the first one is about fake unions. So let's have a little chat about that quickly. Bunny, this is the most recent link I put in Shadowy Cabal. So this is an interesting thing. This is local news for me. I live near Lewisham. It's a borough in London. L plus ratio plus British, and it is one of the places where there is a strong presence of London Renters Union already.
Nice.
And they're doing great work, and I really need to emphasize this, doing great work with people in social housing and people who are like public sector renters, people who are renting from the council or renting in social housing, right? And Generation Rent, who sound like they should be really cool and based and be helping out the renters and whatever, are here endorsing a renters union that operates through Lewisham Council, which... Yeah. So this is what we call a yellow union, which the first yellow unions were set up in France with deliberate coloring of yellow. I need to say, I think this color yellow is incidental. I don't think this is deliberate.
Yeah, quite funny how they actually legit did that.
I know, it just walked right into the rake there. But they... the original yellow unions were set up in France with the color yellow deliberately to drive away from the color red for the labor movement and trade unionism. And basically a yellow union is anything from like police unions to things that are like a union set up by a company so that like employees can have their concerns heard by the company union, and it's like fuck off. Like this is
kind of like a weird like union HR department.
I was going to say,
it's meant to co-opt people's. Well, I think in a huge way, if you look into the history of HR actually just came out of yellow unions. Like HR is as much an attempt to co-opt struggles for a better work environment as yellow unions are, and the yellow unions are a little bit more sinister because they try and co-opt people's solidarity as well. So this is, like I'm saying, this is really interesting. So like London Renters Union is already there and already doing incredible work for every renter, and then this is Lewisham Council wants to work with private renters to support a local private renters union, right? So only people who are renting private. So in other words, renting renting much more expensive apartments on average. Like it's not always going to be the case, but on average. And that was just fucking laughable. And if you go in the other quote tweets of that Generation Rent tweet, Lewisham Labour actually quoted it themselves, and this is now we have to remember this is Labour under Starmer, right? So this is Blairite right wing Labour, and they said, here we go, this is Lewisham Labour values in action. And I completely agree.
Of course it is.
A fake organization fucking propped up to co-opt the working class solidarity and trade on the credibility of real trade unionism. Yeah, that is actually Labour's values in action. Good fucking job. So that was something, I thought that was an interesting kind of similar example to what you're talking about, Tim. But I just wanted to say, shout out London Renters Union. It's a great organization, and it's a real union who actually helps people.
And that's something that everybody in chat needs to be looking out for. If you've still not joined a union and you're looking for a union to join, be very mindful that there are going to be attempts like this as unions get more and more popular, which it appears, if anything that we've been covering is to go by, is the case. Then we're going to start seeing more and more of this stuff popping up. So just be incredibly mindful.
And if you have any questions,
I think Tim's thing about Minneapolis shows that that's the case right now. Like the people are literally doing that right now.
And if any of you have any questions in the chat about like, is this union a good union or not, feel free to add the Red Planet Twitter and reach out to us. Y'all could reach out to us way more if you have questions. Like
we're very online.
Ask me, we're very online. A lot of you come to my stream and you'll ask me directly, and sometimes I'm not the best person to ask because honestly, a lot of I think the rest of the hosts are far more educated in a lot of these things than I am. So ask the Red Planet Twitter, and I feel like that's probably the best way to go about it because I know a lot of you have a lot of questions. So
it's also really good because and this is actually going to blend well into what we're going to talk about today. It's also really good because you're then getting in touch with us. And what we really want is feedback. Not just like constructive criticism on the show, but we really want to hear from you. And when we're telling you to go out and get involved with stuff, go and get into organizations and tell us about that, it's because we want to talk about it on the show. Like if you're doing something fucking based, we would totally have you on. Like if you're a chatter and you want to like hang with us and chat about something cool you're doing, that's totally a possibility. And similarly, if you're like looking to join a union and you come across something and you're like, oh, this is a bit iffy, I'm not sure what this is, and you tag us, we might talk about it on the show and use it as a teachable moment and a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
So it helps more people than just you if you contact us and let us know about something.
Yeah. And I think also, like, if you're doing something that's cool and like it's like just getting off the ground or whatever, and you just like and it's like obviously like aligned with the values that we have on the show or whatever like that.
Yeah.
And you just want to come on and talk to us about it, and we talk to you and stuff. That's also really good if you're like, an org getting off the ground or whatever. So if people ask you what you're about, you can be like, hey, look, well, we went on this thing and we talked about this, blah, 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 whatever. You can like, learn a little bit about what we're about or whatever. So, it'd be fun. It's a great time.
And the final piece of news I have is the next tweet up, the previous one I sent to the group. Sisters Uncut have actually taken an interesting step. So Sisters Uncut, for those who aren't aware, is an organization that I don't know if they existed before. I'm pretty sure they did, but they did a lot of organizing around the murder of Sarah Everard, which is a hugely well-known and sensationalized event that happened in the UK. A woman called Sarah Everard was killed by a police officer called Wayne Couzens, who kidnapped her, used police powers to do it. He used police handcuffs, and he basically like made out like he was arresting her, and then he horrifyingly murdered her. And Sisters Uncut has done a lot of like feminist organizing towards trying to make women in the UK more safe. And they're actually, they're an intersectional group. They acknowledge that affects women of color more. They've done a lot of training around making trans women feel safe as well, which is really important in the UK. And then part of the response was that like when Sisters Uncut organized a vigil for Sarah Everard, the police like cracked down on it hugely and like beat the shit out of loads of people and arrested loads of people. And it was a big thing. And one positive piece of news is that has been now finally, which is very rare for the Met Police, been ruled as they actually were breaking the law and really fucked up there. So yay, accountability.
That means.
But this is the news that I care about much more, that I want to talk about. Withdraw consent today, sign up to join a Cop Watch group now. So Sisters Uncut is branching out into Cop Watch networks, which is something I would love to do a whole episode about sometime. Let's put that on the schedule.
Yeah, we should.
Cop Watch networks are a really huge step towards police abolition. Because, before there were cops, people just took care of their neighborhoods and their communities together. And now there are cops, and those cops are fucking kidnapping and murdering people, or just beating the shit out of people when they're protesting the cops murdering people and shit like this. And so now we have to keep our neighborhoods safe from cops, but we can take that opportunity and we can make it a way that we, build a new kind of policing, a new kind of justice, community justice, and we keep our neighborhood safe from cops as a stepping stone to keeping our neighborhood safe and not needing cops anymore and getting rid of cops. So I'd love to talk about that. And if people in the UK wanna get involved, the link is available there on Sisters Uncut's Twitter.
Yeah, I put it in this chat. And also Chloe says, big shout out to the OG Black Panther Party, which got its start as a cop watch.
Oh yeah.
They had to do a lot of that. And then there comes all the criticisms of like, you're holding guns, doesn't that make you violent? It's like, oh my god. really Angela Davis has a great we've watched it a million times in my stream. Angela Davis speaks to this very succinctly to this accusation of violence.
She's doing a talk in London today, actually.
For real?
Sick. That's awesome.
Yeah, she's so cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think that's news.
What time is it?
as you will soon find out. You cannot defeat an enemy that you cannot see.